My sister has severe autism, and I used to hate her for making my life a living nightmare. I know it's wrong to say that, yet it's how I felt. Ever since she was born, it's as if I vanished from my parents' radar. I was 6 and thrilled to become a big sister, but that excitement waned rapidly. The change was gradual but undeniable. I had to move to the basement because my parents needed to be closer to my sister. The basement was eerie and cold, and I missed the warmth of being near them. The nights down there were long and lonely. I could hear the rest of the family upstairs and felt so isolated, like I was more of an afterthought than a daughter. Losing my toys to her was another blow. She didn't mean to break them, but she did, and it happened all the time. I remember trying to explain to my parents how it made me feel, hoping for a bit of sympathy, or even justice. All I got was, "She's younger. She doesn't understand that you're the big sister. You should be more understanding." It felt so unfair. These toys were my refuge, and seeing them broken with no one caring enough to fix them only intensified my sense of loss. The MacBook incident was the last straw. The school had given it to me because I was doing really well, and then one day it was destroyed. My school was angry with me for being careless, and my parents piled on the blame. Nobody stopped to consider that it wasn't truly my fault. I was furious and hurt, but mostly I felt alone. It wasn't just about a laptop, it was about feeling like no one had my back when I was earnestly trying to balance being a sister and having a life of my own. I love my sister, of course, but it seems my parents forget that I'm still a child. Also, every time she needs something, I have to drop everything, whether I'm studying, hanging out, or even trying to take a break. It's like I'm on call 24/7 without ever signing up for it. I can't recall the last time I hung out with friends without constantly checking my phone, worried I'd miss a call from home and have to rush back. My life felt as if it were on perpetual pause, always waiting for the next crisis or plea for help. The day I decided to go see the new Spider-Man movie was a big deal for me. It had been ages since I'd made plans for my own enjoyment. My friend Jake had been talking about it for weeks, and his excitement was infectious. I needed this break, a few hours where I could just be a teenager, not a caretaker. So, I made a decision. I'd turn off my phone just this once, enjoy the movie, and not worry about anything else. Just for 2 hours. After walking out of the theater and turning my phone back on, I felt as if I'd been hit by a truck. Missed calls and texts flooded in. When my mom picked up, her anger cut through me. "We needed you an hour ago." I barely got a word in before rushing home, feeling guilty but also somewhat angry. When I got there, my parents were livid. "We rely on you, and you just decide to disappear to watch a movie," my father snapped, his words punctuated by my sister's background noises. It was as if going to the movies was some heinous crime. I tried to explain that I just wanted a break for myself, but it fell on deaf ears. It didn't matter. "Your responsibilities are more important here," my mother added. Eventually, they grounded me, saying I was being irresponsible for sitting through a movie. In my room afterward, it hit me. It wasn't about the movie, it was about feeling trapped. Yeah, I get it, my sister needs me, but sometimes I just want to do something normal without feeling guilty or getting in trouble for simply being a kid and wanting my own life. Having my own life is difficult when I feel trapped in a role I never chose, longing for a sliver of normalcy in a life that feels anything but. I loved my sister deeply, but at that moment, I couldn't help but feel robbed of the simple teenage experiences of friendships and carefree times. Living in my house feels like I'm ensnared in a loop where everything revolves around my sister and her needs. Don't misunderstand me, I understand she requires a lot of care, and I want to be there for her. But sometimes it seems I'm just another item on the family's to-do list. "Your sister, make sure she's okay, can't you? You see, we're busy with her." It's exhausting. I feel like an extra hand, invisible unless she needs something. This feeling of being a slave in my own home is suffocating. I carry this weight, a burden that makes me question my worth as an actual member of the family. There was one week that held the promise of being different. I had been selected to give a speech at a school function. That recognition kindled a spark in me. I worked hard on that speech, pouring my thoughts and emotions into every word. When my parents said they'd be there to see me, I felt valued for the first time in ages. Finally, something I had labored over was getting noticed. I practiced my speech every night, envisioning looking out into the crowd and seeing my parents, perhaps even catching them smiling with pride. The excitement was like a beacon, a rare glimmer in the usual gloom of my daily life. But things didn't turn out that way. They missed it because of something to do with my sister. Once again, they blamed it on her. Standing there, about to start my speech and not seeing them, crushed me. With a shaky voice and trembling hands, I cried, not only for the speech but for all the times I'd felt sidelined. Yes, I got through it, and people clapped, but it felt hollow. I couldn't stem the tears. It's not that I wanted to make a big fuss about them missing the speech, it just hit me hard. It was a stark reminder that no matter what, I always came second. On the way home, all I could think about was how this pattern seemed unending. Talking about colleges with my parents had been something I'd been looking forward to. It started off normally. I was actually excited, for once. It felt like we were focusing on my future, on something about me. I was warming up to the idea, thinking maybe college was my chance to break free and do my own thing, away from the chaos at home. We looked at brochures, discussed majors and campuses. It was the closest I'd come to dreaming in a long while. Then my dad made a joke about picking a high-paying major so I'd be ready to take care of my sister when they were gone. I laughed at first, thinking it was a light-hearted comment, but it struck a nerve. All my pent-up feelings burst forth. I lost it. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I started crying, then screaming, telling him how unfair it was that my entire life had to revolve around being my sister's caretaker. It all came pouring out, every moment of feeling overlooked and undervalued. I tried to make him see how much I'd had to sacrifice, how everything always circled back to what my sister needed. But they didn't get it. My parents just stood there, staring at me as if I were speaking a foreign language, watching me lose my composure. There were no excuses, nothing. Their faces were so cold, so distant. It was as if they couldn't fathom why I was so distraught over a joke. That's when I realized they weren't going to listen to me. I ran to my room, slammed the door, and I've been here ever since. And here's the thing, I've been in here for hours, and they haven't even bothered to check on me. Not a knock, not a word. It's like my outburst didn't matter to them. It's so lonely sitting here, knowing that even this me isn't enough to make them see how much I'm hurting. It feels like I'm trapped in this role they've assigned me, and my feelings about it mean nothing. Am I wrong for wanting more than this, for wanting to be seen as more than just a future caretaker for my sister? It just feels like no matter what I do, my life doesn't count. I'm nothing to them, nothing more than an insurance policy for my sister after they're gone. As the hours turned into a day and then another, without a word from my parents, I knew something had to change. It wasn't just about getting away for a bit, it was about needing space to figure out my own path without constantly being yanked back into the same old mess. I thought of the one person who always seemed to understand, Grandpa. Without much of a plan, I packed a backpack one night and left. I texted him that I was coming. I half expected him to talk me out of it or call my parents, but he didn't. Instead, he texted me back. Staying with Grandpa has been eye-opening. It's not that every moment has been a profound heart-to-heart, but it's quiet here. He lets me be. We've talked about college, about what I might want to do, and it's the first time in a long while that I've been able to consider my future without feeling guilty or stressed. He's been supportive, urging me to think about what I desire, not what I feel obligated to do. It's strange, but in just 1 week here, I've felt more like myself than I have in years. We've eaten together, watched old movies, and he's told stories about when he was my age. It's been nice, simple, and freeing. I've even started looking at colleges again, this time at programs that genuinely interest me, not just the ones that might earn enough to take care of my sister in the future. Being with Grandpa has given me a glimpse of what that could look like, and it's something I want to hold on to. Wow, I never expected all the support and love I've received. I didn't think this post would gain the popularity it has. Thank you all. After reflecting on it, you're right. I don't despise my sister. It's not her fault she was born the way she is. My parents came to talk to me after my breakdown, but I couldn't bring myself to talk to them. I just cried and asked them to leave. I've made arrangements with my grandfather to stay with him for the time being. My parents want to talk to me, but we've decided it's best for me to have some space and time to collect myself. We'll sit down and talk about this later this week. Thank you all again for the love and support through this. I told Grandpa the story of why I broke down the way I did. To be honest, when I finally opened up to him, his reaction was more than I anticipated. I knew he'd be surprised, but he looked shocked, horrified even, when I told him everything. All about how things were at home, how I'd basically been my sister's full-time caregiver on top of everything else, and how it all came crashing down that day with my dad's joke about college and taking care of her forever. Grandpa was really upset, especially when he found out that my sister was supposed to have professional help that she wasn't getting. He said a lot of things. Some of it I feel okay sharing here. Essentially, he said my sister was supposed to be getting professional help and that my parents were ignoring this. The crux of it was that it wasn't right or safe for me to be in that position, especially given how things were going with my sister. He couldn't believe my parents were putting all this on me and had kept so much from the rest of the family. He was also extremely angry about the whole movie incident and said it was the straw that showed how unfairly I was treated. Grandpa's usually pretty laid back, so to see him get so worked up was a big deal. He told me not to talk to my parents unless he was around, which was a relief. Honestly, he said he'd talk to them first, sort everything out, and be there with me for any future conversations. But it wasn't just Grandpa. I heard from aunts, uncles, cousins, you name it. They all checked in, making sure I was okay, and they were all as stunned as Grandpa had been. My parents had told everyone they'd hired a professional caregiver for my sister and were even taking money from the family to pay for it, except the caregiver never existed. Everyone was pretty upset about being lied to, especially regarding something this serious. This past week has been a roller coaster, and yet, in a strange way, it's also been eye-opening. All the drama with my parents and the revelations of things I had no inkling about were overwhelming. But, unexpectedly, there's been a silver lining. My extended family has stepped up in ways I didn't realize I needed. Grandpa has been at the heart of it all, determined to make up for what he refers to as lost time. He's been pushing me to embrace my teenage years again. It feels odd, but in a good way, to be encouraged to hang out with my friends more or simply relax and do whatever I please, things I haven't done in what seems like forever. He's on a mission to help me reclaim parts of my life I didn't even know I was missing. And it's not just him, my aunts and uncles have been incredible. They've been around a lot this week, checking in, bringing food, and truly listening. It's as if they're going out of their way to show they care and to ensure I don't feel alone in this chaos. For the first time in ages, I'm not just seen as my sister's caretaker, I'm just me, and it feels wonderful. The conversation with my parents on Saturday night, however, was a disaster. I went in with a glimmer of hope that we could start mending things. Instead, it all fell apart. They admitted to a host of messed up things that I can't even bear to write down here. But the worst part? Not a single apology. Instead, they doubled down, with my dad even suggesting that I was practically born to be my sister's caretaker. I couldn't hold it together. All the progress I'd made, all the support from the rest of the family, it felt like it was slipping away. I called them out on the lies about the caretaker and the money they claimed to be spending. They just evaded and made excuses. By the end of the conversation, things were worse than before. It was like slamming into a brick wall, trying to get through to them. After that catastrophic talk, I made up my mind. I'm done. Last night, I had a long discussion with Grandpa and my uncle, and we all agreed that it's best if I don't go back. Today is the day I'm officially moving out to live with Grandpa. It feels strange, making such a significant change, but it also feels right. Like I'm finally taking control of my life again. I've also decided to leave the state for college as soon as I graduate high school. The thought of starting afresh, somewhere new, is exciting. My aunt has been amazing throughout this ordeal. She told me she'll start sending money directly to me, the money she used to give to my dad for my sister's care. It looks like it'll be my college fund now. Since that night, my parents have called a few times, but not to apologize or say they miss me. They only wanted to know when I was coming back. It's as if they don't even attempt to understand why I had to leave. I know this is going to be a big adjustment, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. But at the same time, I feel a weight lifting off me. I'm finally making decisions for myself, and there's a liberating feeling about that. Today truly is the beginning of something new. Admittedly, deciding not to return to my parents was tough. There's a sinking feeling in my stomach, but I believe it'll fade with time. The support from the rest of my family has been incredible. Even with this major decision, their love and support make the whole situation a bit more bearable. The harsh reality is that I've essentially lost my parents through all of this. It's a bitter pill to swallow, a lot to process. Sometimes I find myself wishing things could have been different. But through all the turmoil, I've come to realize something crucial. I don't hate my sister. The anger I felt towards her was misdirected. She's not to blame for how our parents have acted. I love her more than words can express, and hating her for something beyond her control was wrong on so many levels. I hope that someday I can make things right with her. For now, leaving is what I need to do for myself. It's about finding my own path and figuring out who I am outside of this whole mess. It's going to be a journey, but I'm ready for it. Thank you all so much. I wish I could respond to each and every one of you, but my lunch break is short. I'll update tonight on how the move went. Until then, I just want to say that your support has been amazing and your kindness means more to me than anyone could ever fathom. Moving out was surreal. Grandpa and my uncle were with me every step of the way, helping me pack up all the things that mattered to me. We made sure to gather important documents like my birth certificate and social security card. It felt oddly official, as if I was gathering the fragments of my old life to build a new one. My parents were quiet the whole time. Dad left with my sister shortly after I arrived, leaving only Mom to watch us pack. She didn't say much, just lingered in the background. It was awkward and tense. But when we were about to leave, she finally broke down. She told me she loved me and that she'd miss me after days of silence. Those words hit me hard. I hugged her and said goodbye, and it was one of the toughest things I've ever done. Now, sitting in my new room at Grandpa's house, I keep replaying that moment. Did she really mean what she said? It's hard to know for sure, but I want to believe. All I can do now is focus on the future and hope that, with time, my parents and I can find our way back to each other.